There are stories about every hero, how they became great. Now, it's your turn.
Fear not, citizens. Hope has arrived because this is the Amateur Otaku podcast, and we are here talking Boku no Hero Academia. Isaac, it has been 8 months since this channel has covered the manga. It's probably been well over a year since you've been here to talk with me for it.
Yeah, it was over a year. I can't recall why I wasn't involved with it, but it has to be been something. I don't know.
A lot has happened. This book, at the time of this recording, has 2 chapters left. It's crazy. This is crazy. This channel has owed so much to My Hero Academia over the years, in some form or fashion, whether it's just me reading it or watching it and us covering it week to week, having you with me, having Brandon on, having Leo, having Barrett Courtney, having Ren Geekness. It's been a blast talking this book on this channel. We're gonna give like final thoughts and all that stuff eventually. Go ahead, hit me.
I was just gonna say it has been a heroic journey, but
the puns continue, even though he's not the, for those who are listening audio only, he's not the mad punster anymore. He is currently labeled the ultimate Bakugo hater. And we're going to get into that a little bit. I'm a little scared because it's just me and Isaac here. So, like, I'm going to have to overcome a lot of hate on my own. But for those of you who are listening, again, this is covering the My Hero Academia manga. I know the anime is currently running. We will probably cover season 7 at some point and talk about that. It's been really great to watch. But we're going to do some catching up to do because it's been 8 months. The last time we talked, it was the end of Toga versus Uraraka. So instead of just jumping straight to the end, we're going to talk about All for One versus All Might. Yeah. Round 3, as far as we know. And this book...
round 3 in the manga-wise. I mean, they talk about how it's been off-screen earlier, but this is truly the third, if I'm not mistaken, yes?
Yeah, this book is... This mini arc is interesting, right? Because we're in this giant war, and we get to the point where All for One has gotten too powerful. Like, he's stolen Hawks' quirk. All Endeavor is down for the count. He's making his way towards Tomura Shigaraki, and once they meet, he's going to fuse that power, and they're finally going to become one, and they can take One for All from Deku. So All Might has the ultimate decision of, all right, I guess this is where I'm going to stop him, right? And to me, this is very interesting. I want your thoughts on this. Did you like the idea of All Might, like, grabbing the Iron Man briefcase and becoming Armored Might, as he's called?
Honestly, yes, because it's like poetry. It rhymed. They never really had an end off with their last battle. Sure, he pretty much got useless. I don't know how to say useless, but after that battle, and All for One survived, and it wasn't really a who won type of deal, because we all know that he had some strings in the prison while he was in, so now he could just have a last fight. That kind of yes, honestly. And that's why I like the idea of them fighting for a third time. And considering his status power-wise, well, he needs to buckle up and be Iron Man, or what's the Batman suit in Dark Knight Returns is called.
Armored Batman. He just like plugs himself into the light post and says, "I want you to remember the one man who beat you."
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, no, yeah, for sure. Like,
Excuse me.
it makes total sense for All Might to want to prepare. Like, I love the idea that All Might always knew he was never gonna win. Right? All Might steps in and says, "Hey, I need to buy Deku some time. I need to stall." Right? Because Deku's over there struggling. I mean, we talked about what happened in that fight with with
Yeah,
Bakugo getting incapacitated and the rest of those heroes falling. It's like a lot is going on, and we just had Uraraka take down all of the Twice clones in Himiko Toga, and All Might can't stand by any longer. I also love that All Might kind of reflects, right? And he's like, "Hey, I'm supposed to die a gruesome death. Today's gonna be that day, but I'm gonna make sure I step up because he's a hero, of course. Heroes can't just sit there and watch
yeah,
somebody, take over the world." I
exactly.
also think it's interesting that this is the strongest version of All for One, right? Because he rewinds and he's like in his prime again.
Yeah,
And the thesis of the story, right? The first chapter, Deku asks the question, "Can I become a hero like you even if I don't have a quirk?" And All Might, now being quirkless, has to go be a hero. I just think that's poetic. Like you said, it rhymes.
yeah. Poetic. It rhymes, and and it's quite what it's called, chaotic fight for so few pages that he gave us,
Yeah, in this
and it's
fight, it's very interesting, right? Because he has all the quirks of his students, which is kind of cool.
I mean, I'm looking forward to see this suit in action once they handle it in the anime. I'm not gonna lie, because it's kind of insane.
It is. We're so far behind covering this manga. I don't know if you've been watching this season, but the new intro, we see the suit, and I'm just like,
Ooh,
gosh, this looks so
I'm not
cool.
caught up. I'm not caught up with the anime, I will admit, but there is so much to
Yeah,
watch, so little time.
I get it, and you already know how the story's gonna go. So yeah, I understand. For what it's worth, your favorite episode just happened. So cool.
It would have been my favorite episode would it not been for a specific thing, but I digress.
We'll get there in a bit. But All Might shows up, and again, he's remembering the words of Sir Night Eye, of like how he's gonna die a gruesome death, and he's okay with that, right? So he gets this suit, and we see him fighting, and he uses this extremely high tech black and gold armor. I love that Horikoshi makes sure to give us a color page with this suit, so we know from the get go what it looks like. It kind of looks like one of Iron Man's suits. I don't remember which comic it was in. It might have been like Age of Ultron or something, but Iron Man has like this black and gold armor,
Mm.
and it's clear inspiration. I
Let
also
me
love how
do
he still has the
some.
hair. Right.
I was
He has the hair and it looks like
Iron
bat
Man.
ears.
I mean, it's I didn't know that Horikoshi was a big Marvel and to an extent Batman. It was as DC Comics fans, but mostly Marvel for obvious reasons.
Yeah, it never came up. It didn't come up one time, I don't think, throughout this entire story. But
Yeah,
it wasn't obvious the homage when he has the suitcase, and in the car he's responding like a Batmobile. It's very clearly an Iron Man, Batman, inspiration
yeah,
there. But that's what makes it cool because much like Batman, right? How Batman knows the weaknesses of the Justice League and he prepares for that day. All Might has prepared to battle All for One, and you can tell that
mm,
All Might is at his most unhinged because he's just laughing maniacally in the face of death, because if he's going out swinging. We see him use Black Whip, we see him use Dark Shadow, we see him use creating new things, right? And it's so fascinating seeing All Might kind of take on some of Deku's characteristics, because that's very much how Deku fights. And All Might has
yeah.
generally just been a brawler. I'm the strongest one here. I'm just gonna beat the crap out of you. And I think that's what helps him in this fight. He's throwing All for One for a loop because he's no longer playing into his usual tendencies. It's just very interesting to watch like this old school fighter get back into the ring. It's very much like Rocky Balboa in that way.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. Also, is it this costume that you're talking about? And I did a quick Google search, and that is the closest thing I can find.
That is just straight up Ultron? No, that's not the one
Yeah,
I'm
but it
thinking
just
of, but that's still close.
because
Mine's
with
the one I'm thinking of. I googled it is Mark 42 in Marvel Comics, whatever that is. But yeah, I think that's very much inspiration for All Might. It's weird because he could have just like leaned into All Might's color scheme with like the blue and the red, and you know, gone like classic Iron
yeah,
Man or
that
Superman. But
that is something that surprised me though,
the color,
because yeah, the color. But maybe he wanted to be. I was gonna say maybe he wanted to be a bit more realistic or something, but then again, this is a superhero world, so
I'm gonna like if we're gonna theorize about the color scheme, it's the same colors as Nana Shimura's costume. So maybe that's an
a
homage to his
tribute to
fallen
her.
master.
Could
Yeah.
be. That makes sense.
Especially since she was quirkless when she died fighting All for One anyway. This is it.
Yeah, I can see it.
For the audio listeners, it is again Mark 42, Iron Man in Marvel Comics, not to be confused with Mark 42 in the MCU, which is a completely different color. But yeah, I also think All for One as a character is fascinating because in this arc we learn a lot more about him as a character, right? I know I'm blending arcs a little bit together, but this last act is like a homogenous monster that it's kind of hard to say, oh, this is this arc and this is that arc, right? But
Yeah.
learning more about All for One as he's regressing, right? And like the hatred he has for All Might is so fascinating. And we start to see the cracks start to show of his obsession. He's pretty much ignoring Shigaraki. He's not even focused on that goal anymore, which ends up gonna play into his downfall because of his obsession with All Might. Because again, All Might, much like the Dark Knight Returns, like you mentioned before, Isaac, the one man who beat him, right? All the other
Yeah.
users of One for All fell, except for All Might.
To some extent, I would argue that All for One, and he has tendencies of Lex Luthor during the story, if we really think about it, considering all the threads behind the backs and all those kind of yes. But during his fight
Yeah.
here, I argue he becomes more like Joker if we do another DC Comics turn due to his obsession with All Might and just want to take him down.
Yeah, again, he's that thorn in his side that just won't go away. And so, yeah, the intelligence and and again, I know I'm talking about like all these different storylines. The anime just had a scene where he's just like, I have a million plans and backup plans to those million plans. But when it comes to All Might, it all goes out the window. Like there's a panel here where it's like he's on course to beat Shigaraki, and then he veers off because he wants to go fight and chase All Might down like an alleyway. And it's like, that's insanity. That's really crazy. But
AKA Joker.
that's his entire goal. Is like he wants to crush All Might. Because All Might stands for something bigger, I think is also part of it. Like we cut back to somehow in the world of My Hero Academia, helicopters don't get destroyed and they follow every single event and just broadcast it live for the world to see, which I feel like is crazy.
Yeah.
But like they're just showing All Might fight All for One on live TV, and everybody's just watching this happen, and All for One knows this, and he wants to destroy him right then and there and crush their hope, right? Because he's that sense of comfort. He's there to protect them, and once you take the symbol of peace down, anarchy ensues. Did you think he was going to kill him there?
Yeah, obviously. But do it slowly for the reason that you said. He was break the spirits out of everyone. Even if he might not be as powerful as it was before, he's still a symbol, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why he's always smiling, right? He wants to wipe that stupid grin off his face. I even love how All Might, he calls out, he's like, he could have went for my head and just killed me, but you want to see my face. So he sacrifices his legs, right? Because he knows if he loses his legs, whatever, screw it. But All for One doesn't want to kill him because he wants to torture him. And he manipulates him in the way that All for One manipulated All Might in their last fight. Because once he mentions that he took Shigaraki in, he's trying to like mentally destroy him and like do that warfare. But All Might flips it around on him this time, which I think is crazy.
Which is genius if you really think about it, because he wanted to distract him, and you can't just distract with your fist. You need to have the right words also.
Yeah, I love All Might's journey here because again, him being that quirkless hero that Deku wished he could become is something that I think is very fascinating and kind of plays to that theme of what it means to be a hero, right? Because one thing that always rubbed me the wrong way with My Hero Academia was the question of can you be a hero without a power? I feel like is yes, but the show and the manga were just vehemently, no, you can't, of course not. This is why All Might has to give him a power. This is why Lemillion had to basically retire once he lost his power, you know? And so to kind of see them circle back and be like, well, actually, I think is pretty interesting.
But it's sort of like we all have also have to remember, in this big part of My Hero Academia is when the hero society falls because of how is corrupt the right word? I mean,
yeah, it's for sure corrupt. I mean, look at Endeavor. He's the number 2 hero, and he's a piece of shit.
They say that he can't be a hero due to lack of power. It's a symbolism on how the hero society was before, but now when they have changed, it will diverge to that you can be a hero even without powers. Those type of deals.
Oh, we'll get into that being powerless later on.
Yeah, but you get what I mean. Get what I mean?
For sure, yeah. Like it's very much, the entire world is going through a story arc, right? Of like what it means to be a hero, because All Might was the definition of heroism, but he's also a very flawed view of heroism, right? Like All Might, and this is a greater theme of My Hero Academia in general, but like All Might's way of being a hero is effectively wrong. And even though the show and us as viewers love him, he went about it the wrong way. One thing that's clear, and we see this from the overhaul arc to now, we really see it from the beginning of the show to now, but like the idea of unity, the idea of working together to reach a common goal, right? The idea of the Avengers, the Justice League, not all heroes can take on all battles alone, which is something that All Might didn't learn. And you can argue, even up until this point, he didn't learn. But
to be fair, this time he's just meant to stall. He knew that he wouldn't be able to stop him.
Sure, but if a second hero went with him, maybe he could have had a better shot. Is my point. He still goes out there alone.
Yeah, fair enough.
But like even in this end battle, they realized that the problem was All Might fought All for One alone. I always go back to that fight, right? And Endeavor's just there yelling at All Might to not lose. And it's like, bitch, go up there and fight with him. You are the top 2 heroes. But that's what Hero Society was at that point in the story, where it's like, it's All Might or nothing. Whereas by the time you get to the end of it, it's like, yeah, Deku needs Bakugo, or Bakugo needed Mirako and Best Jeanist, or the big 3 need to work together, or Jiro and Tokoyami have to help Hawks and Endeavor, right? Like, the idea of togetherness and that change in Hero Society, I think is probably the biggest growth in the story as a whole of like, yeah, I mean, Deku alone couldn't be a hero in season 1 My Hero Academia, right? But quirkless Deku in a future where they all work together, yeah, maybe he can be Batman, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Batman would be a prime example, considering what is that you're constantly saying his true power is his intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, that's the value he brings to the Justice League. What's he going to do against Darkseid?
I
You
mean,
know, aside from be like the idea guy and the money.
I mean, just look how he handled Darkseid at the last battle in DC animated universe. Yes, I've seen that show.
I'm so proud of you. Good job. Do you know how many times you're like, haven't seen it, didn't watch it? Basically, everything else, like whenever you recommend an anime to me, that's how everything else feels when we talk about anything that's not anime. It's just like, well, you just now saw Aladdin for like the first time a week ago. That's cool.
Yeah.
No, but that's great. Yeah, and in Justice League Unlimited, like he's just jumping around, trying not to die. He didn't do anything of note. He almost died once, and that pissed Superman off, and that was the push. That's what he brought motivation.
I will say this though, I would have loved to see a Kirkless Deku or a Kirkless All Might. Should I more say? Did you see the Batman Superman Apocalypse, where we are introduced to Supergirl and he kidnaps her to get and all those? Yes.
Yeah, it's been a while though, so whatever you're referencing, you're gonna have to refresh me and the audience a little bit.
I would have loved to see something similar to the scene where Darkseid is having Batman on the show call, and even then Batman had the upper hand because he has thought about plans that will stop Darkseid. Yes, but because if he doesn't let them go, he goes down with them. And Darkseid, even if he could just break Batman's bones, he can't stop the thing Batman did. I think it was change the locks on the bombs, and if he died, they would go off or something. I can't recall exactly what it was, but
that's interesting.
That's what I thought about when going through this arc, because, or should I say, fight in this case, because it would just have been interesting to see a scenario like that.
I think that's kind of the point of this fight, though. This is kind of that scenario where it's like, All Might, while he's here for it to be a distraction, he is going toe to toe with this dude. Even though half of the battle is mental. But yeah, I love this from All Might's perspective, and I love that we kind of like My Hero in these final moments. We're going a lot into like the mental warfare of this, and we see Night Eye, we see visions of Nana Shimura for All Might, right? And he's like, "Are you guys specters? Am I imagining this?" And it's never really clear. But I love that Night Eye is just like, hey, when Deku said he was going to change the future, he did. And it was thanks to everyone's belief and prayers and thoughts of positivity that they were able to shape this future, which is, I didn't expect My Hero to get like weirdly spiritual in its final arc about that, but I thought that was interesting.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, I guess one for all and all for one are technically spiritual, like manifestations of past lives, right?
And it's technically, to some extent, yin and yang, if you really go think about it.
Yeah. But I love how they're just like, hey, don't give up. Keep fighting. And I think that's why, we'll talk about Bakugo in a second, but I think that's why Bakugo coming back after like seeing the full picture makes way more sense now, because like it was fate for him not to die that day. It was the belief that brought him back. It was his will not to die that restarted his own heart, which is weird.
Yeah.
But also like, we've done shit like this before, and it's like, okay, whatever.
Honestly, had that wound been, it should have been. It could look deadly, but it wasn't as obvious. I don't want to say go the JK route, but if you catch my drift, but in stuff like Dragon Ball, if the Dragon Balls weren't a thing, in Bleach, in any other Shonen Jump show, even Fairy Tail, that is a lot of power of friendship. A wound like that would have a character killed and not coming back. It just, you're absolutely right in the point of why he returned all that. Yes, I'm not gonna dismantle that. I just think he went too he went a bit overblown with the wound.
So
if it truly were about to come back, if I'm being completely honest.
So I'm going to push back a little bit because you referenced all these other series of like, this would be a fatal wound in these other stories, right? This is the same manga that had Sir Night-Eye like almost have a giant hole ripped inside him. This is the same story where Best Jeanist' heart exploded and he came back. You know, this is the same story where All Might is missing 90% of his internal organs and he's still alive.
Fair enough.
So I feel like
Fair enough.
Yeah, in the context of My Hero Academia, we have seen organs literally removed and destroyed from people, and they still somehow miraculously don't just survive, they can still fight. Like the fact that All Might was injured, but he can still fight for an hour, he shouldn't be walking, but he is. So, yeah, that's my take on Bakugo's wound. Okay. I feel like for me... Go ahead.
I was just gonna say fair enough. Maybe my bias is a bit on here also, but I digress.
I mean, yeah, I think you just wanted him to die.
Obviously
might be it. No, but yeah. So Bakugo comes back. He stands up. This is a major moment because, for context, Bakugo's been dead for a year. He's been dead for a full year. In real time. On the battlefield, he's probably only dead for like 5 minutes.
I would make a JJK joke here, but it would be spoilers for JJK here. If there is any My Hero Academia readers, there are only JJK anime watchers. But you get the joke.
You are my special. No, but he stands up. He gives Deku a look. And Deku launches him towards All Might. Shigaraki doesn't think he's going to make it in time. All Might's about to get ripped in half. Bakugo, being able to move at light speed now, which is something that is crazy to think about, somehow catches All Might, blows All For One's arms off. Now he fights All For One. This is going to be the part where you edit for a second, Isaac. So, Kachan is back. He's alive, thanks to Ed Shot and Best Jeanist providing incredible surgery. Isaac, I'm gonna give you the space because you're already sighing, and I know I'm probably gonna do the bulk of talking about this fight. So, go for it. Why do you hate that Bakugo is alive, and not just because you hate Bakugo? Give me another reason.
Honestly, okay, I will timestamp this because for those that are JK anime only watchers, but they are My Hero Academia readers. I will admit that. It maybe it's my own bias. I don't know. But considering the popularity... popularity of the character, I wonder if... I wish to... Part of me that don't like the character wished Horikoshi had the ball... It's me questioning if he got forced by the editors or so. But then again, the editors allowed Gege to make Gijay become Gislight J instead. if you catch my
I don't think
drift.
the editors forced his hand, because who defeats All for One? I feel like it was always meant to be Bakugo from like the jump.
I don't know. Maybe
Okay,
don't
so
know.
we're gonna do this. We're gonna rip the Band-Aid off. Why do you hate Katsuki Bakugo? If we're gonna be here for 40 minutes and you talk about it, we'll be here for 40 minutes. Go for it. I want you to get it out.
It's
I got nowhere to be.
It's his aggressive behavior towards his colleague, and the fact that the Deku tries to become wants to be a best friend with a bully that pretty much tells him to KIS himself. Get what makes
I was just gesturing it so people know what you're trying to say, because you're not going to say it out loud.
yeah. Okay, and that makes me kind of pissed off as someone that got heavily bullied and all, etc. And I don't understand how people can respect someone with that type of behavior. And it was so long in towards the story where he redeemed himself that they couldn't take it seriously, to be quite honest. There,
Okay.
yes, with for example, with Jita, was a mass murder at the beginning, all those yes, but they had that arc arc directly after with the Frieza saga. He helped out. He learned. He got to know them, all those yes, and become a better person.
Yeah.
It took just
Right.
one arc for them to learn.
So I want to
learn his.
I want to interject right quick.
Yes.
What's the arc that you think Bakugo's redemption starts? Is it when he apologizes in season 6? Like when Deku's vigilante arc?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Go ahead, finish your thought.
And it just comes.
I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. I get the idea of having a school bully and having hybris and taking down a notch. I'm not against that stereotype. It works in the settings like this. It just took for long, and he got overblown. I could maybe you can have it so that he changed his attitude after they saved him, so that like he realized that he acts like he could fit within the villain society. Hey, they try to convert him because how he behaves. And that should be a wake-up call for him.
So that's the thing I think you're missing that's leading you to dislike this character. Now, again, I'm not trying to change your mind about this character with only 2 chapters left in this book. I don't really care if you end up hating Bakugo throughout all of this, right? But I want to take you back to when All Might loses his power, right? Bakugo's change in character is from that moment, 3 seasons earlier. Like the him apologizing to Deku is like the culmination of all of it, but his change happens that episode, that day, when he gets kidnapped. And we even have Deku versus Kachan Part 2, where he finally reveals how that entire situation and why he bullies Deku, of like, this person who's behind me is now surpassing me. And he's having, you know, this entire breakdown of like, Bakugo has always been pushed to be the strongest, to be the best. And this person who's powerless, he's always known that he's better than him. And that's why that apology hit so much harder, because they revealed that information way earlier. And All Might even says, now that they've aired this out, they can be proper rivals. And Bakugo doesn't bully Deku from that point forward. He still calls him Deku. He's like, his personality will always be loud, brash, and harsh. But the bullying stops in season 3. And the apology happens in season 6, which I feel like he can. Go ahead.
I don't get. I don't understand. Maybe I've just been so furious that I didn't think about it, and maybe I should try and go back and read it to see what you're thinking of. Because that flew under my head, or I'm just Mandela infecting right now.
Yeah, because in that fight, it's at the school, right? And this is when All Might shows up. This is the end of season 3, I think. He and Deku work it out, and Deku even says, I'm going to keep fighting him because this is clearly basically his therapy session, and Deku's learning more about Bakugo's mentality. And Bakugo is airing out that trying to be like, again, I'm going to slow down and talk about the character of Katsuki Bakugo for a second. Bakugo is a prodigy, right? In those flashbacks when they're really small, Deku learns he's quirkless and he's having like a breakdown. Bakugo, we see in his eyes, everybody's saying he's going to be as strong as All Might. He's going to be a great hero. And like he, at 5 years old, is being propped up of like greatness. He's being primed for greatness. And as a child, again, I want to reframe that they're all still children. That gets to your head and he becomes an arrogant SOB. And again, this is not defending his actions, but like he becomes conceited and arrogant. And in his apology to Deku, he says that it was always out of insecurity of he always knew Deku was a better person than him. And so he masked that by being mean to him. Again, not forgiving his actions, but that's what that apology is saying. And in season 3, they work through that and he stops bullying him in like the show's 4th arc. So not too far from Vegeta.
Maybe I'm just misremembering, and it could also be a bit part of me as somewhat got heavily bullied in school, and I mean bullies that legitimately threaten to kill me, but so it just goes on my nerve on that regard, and it makes me look at parts. That I will admit, but now you get the
I get it. I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from. I do just want to say, like, I don't think his arc came too late. Whether you like it or not, that's entirely up to you. I'm not gonna ever fight you on that. But his change happened way earlier than you're giving him credit for. That's why he and Deku are at Endeavor's agency. Like, I also want to like translate Bakugo speak. When he says die, he doesn't literally mean it. He says that to everyone in every situation. You almost need a dictionary to understand what he means. That's his version of believe it or databayo at this point. So like by season 4, if he says die, you just shrug it off and laugh at him at that point. And I'd want you to like kind of realize that he's not literally telling every character to kill themselves.
I will have to go back and read it then. I could just...
All you have to do is watch Deku versus Kacchan Part 2. That is episode 23 of season 3. You don't have to read all that. Trust me, that's a ways back. But, so Bakugo shows up in this fight, and his entire arc, up until this point, again, he's a prodigy. He's always been told he's the best. He was the best at UA. Like, he won the sports festival, right? He is the strongest in that class, but quickly he becomes outclassed by Shoto and Deku, which is why when he fights Shigaraki, his final moments are, can I still catch up to you, Izuku? And he ultimately doesn't at that point. But he gets a second shot because he is back, and he fights All for One. And this time, he makes light work of him, which is insane. He's now the underdog, right? He's always referred to the supporting cast of the show as extras. And so for All for One to say, how can this measly extra think he can stand in my way? I think encapsulates Bakugo's arc of being humbled and humility as the story goes on and realize he's not the main character. I'm going to have a video talking about how Bakugo, his entire arc is he's the main character trapped in a supporting character's body. Which plays into how he presents himself and how he's perceived and his arc in the story. But this extra fighting All for One and winning, I think is insane. And I love that Bakugo learned from his fight with Shigaraki. He's gotten faster. He's predicting movements. He's using his one quirk in multiple ways. Now he's the one who's the underdog. And he's the one who has to like try and punch up. And even when he's fighting All for One, there's a moment where All for One unleashes a blast, and Bakugo doesn't dodge it. He tanks it and figures out a way to redirect it, which is exactly what Deku does to him in their first fight, Deku versus Kacchan Part 1, in Season 1 of My Hero Academia. So I think that's interesting. I want your thoughts on this fight, but biases and all, what did you think of Bakugo versus All for One? Oh boy.
I mean,
That large sigh leads me to believe you didn't like.
there is two ways of looking at it, if I'm being
Okay.
completely honest. If I were to look at it from someone, if I were to be a Bakugo fan,
Yeah.
I'm just spitballing here. I would say that. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Seeing him joining like that, I will admit it was. I was. You know, you can imagine
Okay.
how.
I hate to decipher. I hate to decipher like too much into what you're saying, but is the because it doesn't make sense, or is it the oh god I have to deal with Bakugo who I hate again? I just want clarity. That's all.
The latter one. But
Okay.
if we're going about going from the perspective of if I were to be a Bakugo fan, it's one of the most intense and batshit insane fights I've read in a long time.
The art in this is
There are,
amazing, by the way.
and I can imagine if you're someone that is a massive Bakugo fan, you love every panel of it. If I'm going to be objective of it, because choreography wise and all those, yes, it is arguably one of the most impressive ones. If
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it's
So
crazy seeing All for One get flustered because someone dares stand up to him. You know, and he thinks of this the second user, and he thinks of Bakugo of like these gnats that just how dare they step in front of me and think that they can take me on, right? And that again, that hubris, that arrogance, the very thing that Bakugo struggles with, leading into that, and like even Bakugo acknowledging I couldn't be here if it wasn't for the help of everyone else. I think that nail in both of those characters' character arcs is something insanely interesting. I just wish My Hero played into that a little bit more because we always talk about how Bakugo didn't have a rival. His rival was himself or Zuzu.
yeah,
But like Deku had Shigaraki, Uraraka had Toga, Shoto had Dabi. But Bakugo didn't have a villain, so by the time we got here, it's just like, oh, that makes sense. But also, I kind of wish we built up to this a little bit more.
yeah. But I will I will admit, I will still probably not be a fan of Bakugo. But if I'm going to, when I'm going to go back and look from your perspective, maybe I will hate him a bit, or just
Hate him
dislike
less.
him, or at least
Yeah,
just dislike him.
yeah. Like again, I'm not trying to argue the case of why you should respect Katsuki Bakugo. Like
Yeah.
I don't. Again, the story's over at this point. I don't care, but I do think it's worth like if you're gonna say his apology came too late, I do think it's worth kind of looking back at like how his character did change going forward. Because I think it progresses a lot sooner than you want to give him credit for. It's just he doesn't make it known or he doesn't say it out loud, which I think that happens with a lot of people, right? Nobody's gonna say, "Hey guys, I'm a completely different person now." But when the time came, he said what he needed to say because he cares about Izuku, who is his friend, which
Like
by
I
itself
said,
is an insane amount of growth.
I don't think I will ever like that this character, but I how should I put it?
To your credit,
Your opinion.
to your point, though. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just gonna say you have you are one of the people that are really good at analyzing stories and all that jazz to a point that I will actually go back because of it, because you always makes good points even if I might disagreeing with you at points and all.
Ah, shucks. I do want to say, Isaac, Horikoshi is on record for saying that he made Bakugo too big of a bully in that first arc. Because like to this day, he's like, I should not have had that. I should not have had Bakugo tell Deku to X himself. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I understand why to this day you were still mad about that, because even the author's like, yeah, I pushed that too far. I shouldn't have had him say that. So your feelings are valid. They're warranted. But also, like, if we can forgive Endeavor and Vegeta, I mean, if you forgive Endeavor, we'll talk about that another day. I feel like Endeavor gets what he deserves, honestly. But
yeah, I agree.
But if we can set up redemption arcs for Itachi, I feel like we can also, think about Bakugo a little bit. But also, I understand that personal experiences also play into how you perceive these characters too, and like I get it.
Yeah.
Like, again, I relate to Izuku on such a level that it's scary. So I get it.
Understandable.
So
yeah, but I will go back and to that point that you mentioned.
We're back. Okay. So yeah, those are our thoughts on All Might versus All for One. A little bit of Bakugo versus All for One, which was amazing. From an artistry standpoint, like those panels were some of the best Horikoshi's ever drawn. Like
That's
the planetary like attack that All for One creates is insane. Also just the fact that this fight boils down to Hydrogen Bomb versus Coughing Baby will forever be so funny. Isaac, do you have any closing thoughts on All Might, All for One, Katsuki Bakugo before we call this a day?
Not really. It's besides that, I will go back and watch the parts you talked about, just for the sake of it.
Okay. Yeah, let me know if
Maybe
you watch
I
it between
appreciate
now
the
and the
fight
next
more.
video. Yeah, let me know by the time we get to Deku versus Shigaraki. If you watched that episode, let me know, because I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your takes. If I mean, it could have the opposite effect. You could come out of that and be like, no, he's still a piece of shit. And I would be like, fair enough. But yeah, Bakugo's arc is interesting. All for One as a villain is not my favorite, but I do like what Horikoshi does with him in the end of this, especially when we get to Shigaraki's side of the whole ordeal. And All Might's just the freaking best, dude. Like, I love that All Might gets to have one last battle and contribution to this, even though in the end he still doesn't beat All for One. Were you able to hear those?
Yeah, and I was just gonna. I was about to ask you if Jamie had overstacked herself with cookies again, but then I realized you don't live in the same state as her.
Not even close. I do live by a hospital, so they're probably taking Deku to fix his arms. If you guys heard that.
Jamie,
classic.
it was not. You just couldn't help me.
She's not gonna hear this. She's anime only.
Fair enough.
She's not gonna hear this. Guys, go all at Jamie that clip. That soundbite. No, but guys, if you enjoyed this, we will be back later on this week, by the time you hear this, with Deku versus Shigaraki, as we talk about the conclusion of that battle. And then we're gonna do a live stream the day the final chapter comes out, August 5th, to talk about My Hero Academia's final chapter. We hope we're gonna have a large panel for that one. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a little bit of a reunion for a lot of us there, giving our closing thoughts on My Hero Academia. This series has been running for 10 years now. It's gonna have a movie coming out the day after too, which is crazy.
Which is just insane.
It's insane, and it's insane because when you told me to read this book and watch this anime, season 2 just started airing. So it's not like I came to this that late. So I've been reading this. No. I've been watching and reading the story for like almost 9 years now, which feels very strange to me.
And we have known each other for quite some time. What can I say?
We're getting so old, man. But it's fun. Like, I don't want to be in suspended animation like these characters, where they're all this took place in a year. And that scares me. But you know, it's not going to scare me. You guys hit and like and subscribe. And make sure you give us a like. Bell. Click the bell, hit the like, smash the subscribe button, with your shoot style and your fajins. And we will see you guys next time. This has been the Amateur Otaku Podcast. We're here every week talking manga, talking anime, and as always, go beyond. Plus ultra.
Plus ultra.
Peace sign.